Hello friends, a very warm welcome to the Crochet Hook channel. See, today we have this very beautiful lacy crochet stitch pattern that we're going to work together. See, it has got these small beautiful pineapples worked one atop another that look really awesome, and it's perfectly apt for working shawls, mufflers, shrugs, summer capes, etc. And here horizontally, from after the 2 DCs, we have a chain here. From this chain till this 3rd DC, it is a repeat of 14 stitches. See, from this chain till this 3rd DC, again from the chain next to the DC, from here till this 3rd DC, it is a repeat of 14 stitches horizontally, and here we have worked 1, 2, 3 and 4 repeats of the pattern in this swatch, and vertically, see, this row 3, 4, 5 and 6 are repeated over and over to reach the desired length of the project. See, in the row 3 we have a V stitch here. See, this is row 3, 4, 5 and 6. Here is a V in the 3, then 4, 5, 6, and again here comes this V stitch, then 4, 5 and 6, and again we have this row 3 here with this V stitch and 4, 5 and 6. So just keep continuing repeating rows 3, 4, 5 and 6 over and over to reach the desired length of the project. I guess the stitch information really helps, and for the friends who are joining me here for the first time, please do consider subscribing to my channel. That really motivates, and that really means a lot. Let's get ahead. To begin with, work a slip knot. This is how I work my slip knots. That's the easiest way I find, and as I've already mentioned, this stitch is a repeat of 14, is a multiple of 14 stitches. So here I'm going to work 4 repeats of the pattern. So I'm going to chain 56 plus 6 more chains, a total of 62 chains. So chain 62 for the swatch. I have worked my 62 chains here, and then so here after having worked the chains, yarn over, skip 5 chains from the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 inside the hook into the 6th chain, and simply work 1 DC here. First chain 5 also stand for a DC. We have 2 DCs worked. Work 3 chains, 1, 2 and 3, skip 3 chains below, insert the hook into the 4th chain, work 1 SC here. Then work 5 chains, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, skip 3 chains again, insert the hook into the 4th chain, again work here 1 SC, chain 3 again, 1, 2 and 3, yarn over, skip 3 chains, yarn over and insert the hook into the 4th chain, work 1 DC, yarn over, work 1 DC into the next chain, yarn over, work 1 DC into the next chain. So we have created 3 consecutive DCs here. Chain 3 again, we are going for the 2nd repeat. Skip 3 chains below, insert the hook into the 4th chain, work 1 SC, then work 5 chains, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, again skip 3 chains below, insert the hook into the 4th chain, work 1 SC here, then work 3 more chains, 1, 2 and 3. And after this chain 3, skip 3 chains, yarn over, and again we'll create 3 consecutive DCs. So insert the hook into the 4th chain, work 1 DC, work 1 DC into the next chain, and work 1 DC into the next chain. We have created 3 consecutive DCs here. Work 3 chains. Next repeat starts here. Skip 3 chains, insert the hook into the 4th chain, work 1 SC, then chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, skip 3 chains below, work 1 SC into the 4th chain, then chain 3. Now skip 3 chains below, yarn over, insert the hook into the 4th chain, work 1 DC, work 1 DC into the next chain, and work 1 DC into the next chain. See, I have worked my 3rd DC, please work that. Then chain 3, we are working the last repeat into the 4th chain, work 1 SC, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, skip 3 chains below into the 4th chain, work 1 SC. This is the last repeat, the pattern. Then chain 3 again, 1, 2 and 3, yarn over, skip 3 chains below into the 4th chain, work 1 DC, Then yarn over, work 1 DC into the last chain that's remaining there. Row 1 gets completed here. So the row 1 gets completed, and have a closer look. See here, after working the chains, we skipped 5 chains and worked 1 DC into the 6th chain. This 5 chain also stand for a DC, so we have 2 DCs on either sides of the swatch. And then we skipped 3 chains, worked 3 chains into the 4th chain, worked 1 SC, chain 5, skipped 3 chains into the 4th chain, worked 1 SC, chain 3, skipped 3 chains again, and into the 4th, 5th and 6th chains ahead we worked 3 consecutive DCs. Then again chain 3, skip 3 chains into the 4th chain, work 1 SC, chain 5, skip 3 chains below into the 4th chain, work 1 SC, chain 3, skip 3 chains and work 3 consecutive DCs from the 4th chain ahead. And just like this, we have worked from this chain till this 3rd DC. It is 1 repeat here, from here till here. Then again from this next chain after the DC till this 3rd DC of the 2nd set of DCs. This is the 2nd repeat of the pattern. So to begin row 2, work 6 chains, 1, 2, 3. This first chain 3 stand for a DC. Work 3 more chains, a total of 6 chains. Next chain 3 is the chain 3 gap. Then yarn over and skip the next chain 3 below. Skip this chain 3 into this chain 5. We are going to work 7 DCs. So yarn over into this chain 5, work 7 DCs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So we created 7 DCs into the chain 5 space below. Then chain 3 again. 1, 2 and 3, and here yarn over, skip this next chain 3 and skip the first DC, insert the hook into the 2nd or the center DC and simply work 1 DC atop it. This is how it looks. Chain 3 again. This is the 1 repeat. Again skip this first chain 3 and SC into this chain 5 space here, work 7 DCs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Having created 7 DCs in the chain 5 below, work 3 chains. On either sides of this 7 DCs, we are working 3 chains. And then skip this chain 3 and the first DC, insert the hook atop the 2nd DC of the DC row and work 1 DC atop it like this. Simple. So here we worked 6 chains in the beginning of the row 2 and skipped the first chain 3 into the chain 5 below. We worked 7 DCs. Then we worked 3 chains and we skipped the 3 chain in the first DC. Atop the 2nd DC of the 3 DC set, we worked 1 DC. From here till here, this is 1 repeat. Again, chain 3, skip 3 chains in the chain 5, work 7 DCs, then chain 3 again and skip the 3 chain and first DC atop the 2nd DC, work 1 DC, and here again begin working the 3rd repeat and the 4th repeat the same way, and I'll see you at the end. Just like this, keep moving till the end. So here I have worked my row 2 all till the end. See, I worked this last shell and the last set of 3 chains also. Then yarn over and skip the next chain 3 space and the first DC below. And here in this top 5th chain, insert the hook and simply work 1 DC to end the row 2 here. Row 2 gets ended here. To begin the row 3, work 5 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. First chain 3 stand for DC. Next chain 2 is the chain 2 gap. Then yarn over into the same DC where you just created 5 chains. Insert the hook and work 1 DC. See, a V-stitch is created on the edge here. Then work 3 chains. 1, 2 and 3 down below in the row below. Skip the 3 chains and first 2 DCs of the shell. Insert the hook into the 3rd DC of the shell. Work 1 DC. Yarn over, work 1 DC into the 4th DC of the shell. yarn over, work 1 DC into the 5th DC of the shell. That's it. We are just going to work 3 DCs atop every shell. Skip the next 2 DCs in the next chain 3, yarn, then work 3 chains here, and skip the next 2 DCs in the chain 3 below, and we are aiming at the single DC here. So yarn over, insert the hook atop this DC, in the row below work 1 DC, then work 5 chains, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, yarn over, work 1 more DC into the same DC below. A V stitch is created here. See, the same V stitch we created on the edge in the very beginning of this row here. Again, after the V stitches, we are working 3 consecutive DCs atop the next shell. So then work 3 chains, skip the next chain 3 and first 2 DCs of the shell. Into the 3rd DC of the shell, insert the hook, work 1 DC. Work 1 DC into the 4th DC of the shell below. And work 1 DC into the 5th DC of the shell below. Simple. Again, work 3 chains. This is what we are creating. Just alternating 3 DC set with a V stitch gapped by chain 3. Chain 3 again, skip the 2 DCs in chain 3 into the single DC below, work 1 DC, then work 5 chains, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, yarn over, work 1 more DC into the same DC below, again a V stitch is created. Alternating 3 DC sets with V stitches. So here we worked 5 chains in the beginning and worked the DC into the same DC below, where we just worked 5 chains, then chain 3 atop the shell. In its 3rd, 4th and 5th DCs, we simply created 3 consecutive DCs here. Then 3 chains, work 3 chains, skip the 2 DCs and 3 chains, and atop the single DC in the row below here, we created a V stitch. So we worked 1 DC, chain 5 and 1 DC to create a V stitch here. Again, repeat the same pattern. Up the V, chain 3 and skip the chain 3 and 2 DCs. Atop the 3rd, 4th and 5th DC of the shell below, work 3 DCs. Then work 3 chains again. Skip the 2 DCs in the chain 3, atop the single DC again create a V stitch. So work 1 DC, chain 5, 1 DC. And just like this, here again work 3 chains, then work 3 consecutive DCs, then work 3 chains, then create a V stitch atop the single DC here, the same way, and I'll see you at the end. So here I have worked my row 3 all till the end, worked my this consecutive 3 DCs and last set of 3 chains, then yarn over, and here skip 3 chains after the 2 DCs, skip 3 chains, insert the hook into the 4th chain and work 1 DC. Then work 2 chains, 1 and 2, yarn over, work 1 more DC into the same chain below. Again, we have created a V stitch on this end of the row 3 as well, just as we created in the very beginning. Row 3 gets completed. This is how it looks. We'll go for row 4 nextly. So let's begin row 4. For the row 4, work 3 chains. This 3 chain stand for a DC. Turn the work and yarn over. And we have this chain to space below, a V stitch. Into this chain to space, work 3 DCs. 1, 2 and 3. So we have a total of 4 DCs worked, counting first chain 3 also as a DC. We have 4 DCs in this V stitch. Then work 3 chains, 1, 2 and 3. And see, we are just skipping all this chain 3 and the first DC and aiming at the second or the center DC of the DC set below. Insert the hook atop this second DC and simply work 1 DC atop it. Chain 3, yarn over, skip the next chain 3, and in this V stitch, here we are going to work 7 DCs. Insert the hook and work 7 DCs into the V stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. A shell is created with 7 DCs. Work 3 more chains, then skip the next chain 3 and the first DC. Insert the hook atop the second DC and simply create 1 DC. We are simply alternating this shell with single DC separated by chain 3 sets. See, this is how it looks. Simple pattern. Chain 3 again, yarn over into the next V stitch, skip the chain 3 into the next V stitch, create 7 DCs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. a shell is created again in the V-stitch below with 7 DCs, and on either sides of this shell we are chaining 3, so work 3 chains, and then in the center of the DC set here, in the second DC, simply create 1 DC. Then work 3 chains, 1, 2 and 3, yarn over, skip the next chain 3, into the V-stitch, work 7 DCs to create a shell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. A shell is created. Then chain 3. 1, 2 and 3. Skip the next chain 3 and the 1 DC. Insert the hook into the second DC of this DC set and work simply 1 DC here. Chain 3 again. 1, 2 and 3. Yarn over, and we have this last V-stitch. Skip the next chain 3 into this chain to space of the V-stitch. Work 3 DCs. 1, 2 and 3, and then to end this round, yarn over, insert the hook into the top third chain below and work the 4th DC. In the beginning and end of the row 4 here, we have worked 4 DCs. So to begin with, we work 3 chains and work 3 DCs into the chain 2 space below. Then chain 3 and we worked 1 DC in the center DC of the DC set below. Then chain 3 and we skip the next chain 3 into the chain 5 of the V-stitch. We created a shell with 7 DCs, and again chain 3, 1 DC out of the center DC of the DC set below. From here till here, this is 1 repeat again. 1 DC top the center DC of the DC set below. Then chain 3, create a shell in the next V-stitch. We just move like this till end. Row 4 ends here. Let's begin row 5 together. For the row 5, work 3 chains and turn the work. This chain 3 stands for a DC. Yarn over into the next DC below, work 1 DC. Then work 3 chains, 1, 2 and 3. So we have 2 DCs and 3 chains worked. Skip this first chain 3 atop the single DC below, insert the hook, work 1 DC. Then chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, yarn over, insert the hook into the same DC below, work 1 more DC. We have created a V-stitch here. See? Chain 3 again, 1, 2 and 3, and skip the next 3 chains and first 2 DCs of the shell. Insert the hook into the third DC of the shell, work 1 DC. We'll create 3 consecutive DCs. Into the next DC below, work 1 DC. Into the next DC below, simply work 1 DC. 3 consecutive DCs worked. Chain 3 again, we'll create a V-stitch. So next, skip next 2 DCs and chain 3 atop the single DC here. Insert the hook, work a DC. Then work 5 chains, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, yarn over, insert the hook into the same DC below, work 1 more DC. A V-stitch is created. Simple. 3 DC set is alternating with V-stitches separated by chain 3 sets. Again, skip the next chain 3 and 2 DCs atop the third DC of the shell, work 1 DC. Atop the 4th DC of the shell, work 1 DC, work 1 DC atop the 5th DC of the shell. Then chain 3. Simple. Again, skip the next 2 DCs and chain 3, and atop the single DC here, insert the hook, work 1 DC. We are creating a V-stitch again. Then work 5 chains, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, yarn over, work 1 more DC. Into the same DC below, V-stitch is created. Simple. Chain 3 again, and skip the next chain 3 at first 2 DCs of the shell. Insert the hook into the third DC of the shell, work 1 DC. Work 1 DC into the next DC below, work 1 DC into the next DC below. Then again work 3 chains, skip the next 2 DC and the chain 3 below. Atop the single DC, create a V-stitch, so insert the hook, work 1 DC. Then work 5 chains, then yarn over, work 1 more DC into the same DC below. A V-stitch is created here. See? Then chain 3, and we are going to end this row here. So skip the first 2 DCs, insert the hook atop the third DC, work 1 DC, then yarn over, insert the hook in this top third chain and work the last DC of the row 5 here. 5 rows get ended. So to begin the row 5, we chain 3, that stands for a DC, and worked 1 DC into the next DC below, then chain 3, and atop the single DC that is standing here, we worked a V stitch. So we worked 1 DC, chain 5, 1 DC, then chain 3 and skip the first chain 3 and 2 DCs, and then we worked 3 consecutive DCs out of the 3, 4 and 5 DCs of the shell below. Then again chain 3, out of the single DC below we created a V stitch by working a DC, chain 5 DC, chain 3 again, and again atop the 3 central DCs the shell below, 3, 4 and 5 DCs the shell below, we work. To begin the row 6, work 3 chains. These 3 chains stand for a DC, then turn the work and yarn over, work 1 DC into the next DC below. So we have 2 DCs here. So here we have worked 2 DCs, then work 3 chains, 1, 2 and 3, and yarn over. We have a V stitch here, skip the next chain 3 into the V stitch, work 7 DCs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. A shell is created, then work 3 chains. On either side of the shell we chain 3. So work 3 chains, then yarn over and skip the next chain 3 in the first DC. Insert the hook atop the second DC of the DC set below, work 1 DC. Simple. This is what we are creating in this row 6. Chain 3 again, and here again skip this chain 3 into the chain 5 of the V stitch, work 7 DCs. A shell is alternating with single DC separated by chain 3 sets. Simple. Shell is created, then chain 3 and skip the chain 3 and the first DC. Atop the second DC of the DC set below, work 1 DC. This is how it looks, coming up really beautiful. Chain 3 again into the next V stitch in its chain 5 again, skip the next chain 3 into this V stitch, work 7 DCs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. A shell is created, then 3 chains have to be worked, work 3 chains, yarn over, and atop the center DC of the 3 DC set below, work 1 DC. Chain 3 again will create a shell in the next V stitch here in its chain 5 space, work 7 DCs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Then chain 3 and see, we have reached the end of the row 6. Chain 3 and yarn over and skip the first DC, and atop the top third chain simply insert the hook and work 1 DC to end the row 6 here. This is how it looks. Beautiful. Here 6 rows of the pattern get completed. This is how it looks after completion of 6 rows. And have a closer look for the row 6. We began with 3 chains that stand for a DC, then turn the work into the next DC. We worked 1 DC, then chain 3, and into the V stitch below we created 7 DCs, a shell, then chain 3, and atop the second DC of the 3 DC set below we worked 1 DC, chain 3, again created a shell in the next V stitch, then chain 3, again a single DC atop this second DC of the 3 DC set below, and then again chain 3. So one thing to keep in mind when working chain 6 row 6 is that when we begin we work 2 DCs in the beginning of row 6, but at the end we simply work 1 DC to end the row 6. Just remember this thing, that in the beginning of row 6 we work 2 DCs, but to end it we simply work 1 DC out of the top third chain to end the row 6 here, just as we did earlier also. But just keep this much in mind. So as I've already explained, this pattern is a repeat of 4 rows, row 3, row 4, row 5 and 6. So row 3, 4, 5 and 6 are repeated over and over to reach the desired length of the project, just like this. Keep repeating 3, 4, 5 and 6 rows. So here this beautiful pattern gets completed. I hope I was clear and understandable. Have fun learning, have fun crocheting. See you next time.